The Yukon does not wait for anyone. It is a place that was forgotten by the modern world and never noticed. Ice built it, gold nearly emptied it, and cold has guarded it ever since. This is not a quiet corner of Canada. This is a territory still ruled by extremes, where silence is not peace, it is patience. Larger than California, yet home to fewer people than a single mid-sized American city, the Yukon remains one of the least densely populated places on the entire continent. Roughly 45,000 people share more than 186,000 square miles of mountains, ice fields, and boreal forest, meaning the average resident here has more uninhabited wilderness within reach than almost anyone else on Earth. And yet this emptiness is not absence. It is concentration, every extreme condition the planet can produce compressed into a single, unforgiving territory that refuses to be tamed. In the southwest corner of the territory, the land rises into something almost impossible. The St. Elias Mountains hold the greatest concentration of non-polar ice on the entire planet, an unbroken kingdom of white, stretching further than most people will ever walk in a lifetime. At the center of it all, Mount Logan climbs to 19,551 feet, the highest peak in Canada and the second highest in North America. Its summit plateau alone is larger than the city block most people call home, a frozen table in the sky where temperatures can fall below 60 degrees even in summer. The mountain is so massive that it generates its own localized weather systems, storms forming entirely within its own shadow, while the surrounding valleys sit calm and clear. Beneath Logan's shoulders, the Kaskawulsh Glacier grinds forward inch by inch, a river of ice more than 44 miles long. But this glacier made history in a way few expected. In 2016, its meltwater suddenly abandoned the river it had fed for thousands of years and diverted itself entirely into another watershed, a process scientists call river piracy. It happened not over centuries, but within a single season, a reminder that even something as massive and seemingly permanent as an ice field can change its mind overnight. What took nature 10,000 years to build, the Yukon can undo in one summer. Ice like this does not just sit still. It moves, it groans, it carves in silence into valleys no road will ever reach. The Kluane ice field alone stretches across more than 8,400 square miles, larger than some entire countries, and most of it has never felt a human footprint. Deep within its crevasses, blue light bends and scatters in ways that make the ice glow from within, a color so pure it has no true equivalent anywhere else in nature. Out here, glaciers are not scenery. They are the architecture of the entire territory, carving every valley, feeding every river, and deciding where life can and cannot take hold. And where the ice finally releases its grip, life moves in fast. The Yukon supports one of the largest populations of Dall sheep on Earth, animals built for cliffs so steep that a single misstep would be fatal for almost anything else. Their curled horns can weigh up to 30 pounds, and rams will slam them together at speeds exceeding 20 miles per hour during the full rut, a collision that would shatter bone in almost any other skull. Their hooves are soft at the center and hard at the rim, gripping rock like natural climbing shoes, allowing them to stand on ledges barely wider than a dinner plate, sometimes thousands of feet above the valley floor, with nothing below them but air. Lower in the valleys, the moose reigns as the largest animal in the territory, some bulls weighing over 1,600 pounds, with antlers spanning 6 feet across. In deep snow, that size becomes a liability, forcing them into slow, deliberate movement while predators calculate the odds. Their long legs let them wade through snow that would trap smaller animals entirely, but the energy cost is severe, and a single harsh winter can determine which animals survive to see spring. And predators here do not hesitate long. The Yukon holds one of the healthiest wolf populations remaining in North America, an estimated 4,500 to 5,000 animals moving in packs that can cover more than 20 miles in a single hunt, reading the landscape the way a sailor reads the sea, following ridgelines and river valleys that funnel prey into predictable paths. High above the tree line, a different kind of hunter waits. The golden eagle patrols these same mountain corridors, capable of spotting movement from nearly 2 miles away and diving at speeds that can exceed 150 miles per hour. In a territory where energy is everything, a single missed dive can cost more than it gains, so the eagle waits, sometimes motionless on a ridge, for hours, until the odds shift entirely in its favor. Along the territory's countless lakes and wetlands, trumpeter swans arrive each spring in numbers that make the Yukon one of the most important breeding grounds left for the species in North America. Weighing up to 28 pounds, they are the heaviest flying bird native to the continent, and their wingspan can stretch beyond 7 feet, an animal so large in flight that early explorers sometimes mistook distant flocks for low cloud formations. Nesting pairs return to the same lake year after year, a loyalty to place that mirrors almost everything else that has learned to survive here. Beneath the water itself, the landscape hides a different kind of scale entirely. Lake trout in some of the territory's deepest glacial lakes have been documented living beyond 50 years, growing slowly in water so cold that their metabolism barely registers the passage of a season. Fish that were already adults when Dawson City was still a gold rush boom town. Anglers who venture out onto these lakes describe water so clear and so still that a trout circling 40 feet below the surface remains perfectly visible, suspended in a silence that feels less like a lake and more like glass. By the way, if this kind of untouched wilderness is exactly the kind of place you love exploring with us, do us a favor and hit that like button right now. Subscribing and tapping the bell means you will not miss where this story goes next, and trust me, it only gets wilder from here. Because beneath all of this beauty lies something far more hostile than any predator. The Yukon is defined by permafrost, ground that has remained frozen continuously for thousands of years, in some places extending more than 300 feet below the surface. It is not simply cold soil, it is a foundation that can never be trusted to hold still. When it thaws, even slightly, roads buckle, buildings tilt, and forests collapse into what locals call drunken trees, entire stands of spruce leaning at odd angles as the ground beneath them gives way, roots losing their grip on soil that is no longer solid enough to hold them upright. Nowhere does cold assert itself more violently than the tiny outpost of Snag, where in February of 1947 a thermometer recorded 81.4 degrees, the coldest temperature ever measured in North America. At that temperature, exhaled breath freezes mid-air with an audible crackle locals call the whisper of stars. Metal becomes brittle enough to snap. Vehicles left running for days rather than risk an engine that will never restart. Survival here is not a lifestyle choice, it is a discipline measured in minutes of exposed skin, where frostbite can set in on unprotected flesh in under 60 seconds. Further north, past the Arctic Circle, the tiny community of Old Crow holds the record as the northernmost settlement in the Yukon, accessible only by air or, in deep winter, by frozen river. Home to the Vuntut-Gwitchin First Nation, its roughly 250 residents live beside the porcupine caribou herd, more than 200,000 animals whose annual migration stretches over 1,500 miles, one of the longest land migrations remaining on the planet. For generations, the timing of this migration has meant the difference between a full winter and a hungry one, a rhythm older than the town itself, tracked through oral knowledge passed down long before satellite collars ever existed. Across the territory, 14 First Nations hold traditional territory spanning almost the entire Yukon, cultures whose relationship with this land stretches back more than 10,000 years. Since long before the last ice age, fully released its grip on the region. Place names throughout the territory still carry their original meanings in languages like Southern Tutchone, Northern Tutchone, and Gwich'in, descriptions of the land so precise that a single word can encode information about water flow, hunting conditions, or seasonal danger that outsiders would need an entire sentence to explain. This is not simply history preserved in a museum. It is knowledge still actively used to navigate a landscape that has never stopped being difficult. That kind of endurance defines nearly everything that survives here. The Canada lynx moves through deep snow on paws that act like natural snowshoes, built almost entirely around a single prey species, the snowshoe hare, whose populations rise and crash in cycles roughly every 10 years, dragging the lynx population up and down right behind it, like a shadow that is always a season late. When hares are abundant, lynx kittens thrive. When the cycle crashes, so does everything depending on it, a reminder that in this territory, abundance is never guaranteed, only borrowed. And then there is the grizzly, which in the Yukon must pack an entire year of survival into a few short months. During salmon runs on rivers like the Klondike and the 40 Mile, a single bear can consume over 30 pounds of fish in a day, building the fat reserves needed to survive up to 7 months of hibernation without eating, drinking, or leaving its den. Cubs stay with their mothers for up to 3 years, long enough to learn exactly where and when the rivers will deliver, knowledge passed down like inheritance in a land with no margin for error. Beneath the surface of every den, body temperature drops only slightly compared to true hibernators, a biological compromise that allows a grizzly to wake almost instantly if a threat approaches, even in the depths of winter sleep. Running beneath almost the entire territory, largely invisible at the surface, lies the Tintina Fault, a fracture in the Earth's crust stretching over 900 miles from the Yukon into Alaska. Millions of years of movement along this fault have shifted entire mountain ranges sideways by more than 280 miles relative to each other, meaning that rock formations on one side of the valley are geological strangers to the rock directly across from them, pieces of crust that started their existence hundreds of miles apart before drifting close enough to share the same skyline. Further north, the jagged spires of the Ogilvy Mountains rise from the tundra like the ruins of some ancient fortress formed from limestone laid down when this entire region sat beneath a shallow tropical sea more than 400 million years ago. Fossilized trilobites, marine creatures that vanished long before the first dinosaurs existed, are still occasionally found embedded in rock faces thousands of feet above sea level, a reminder that even the coldest, driest ridgelines here were once ocean floor. But long before wildlife and ancient geology defined this territory in the modern imagination, one word turned it into a place people were willing to die to reach: gold. In August of 1896, 3 prospectors, George Carmack, Skookum Jim Mason, and Dawson Charlie, found gold in a tributary of the Klondike River that would soon be renamed Bonanza Creek. Within 2 years, word had reached the outside world, and more than 100,000 people set out for the Yukon in what became known as the Klondike Gold Rush. Fewer than 30,000 ever actually completed the journey. The Chilkoot Pass alone required each stampeder to haul a full ton of supplies, food, tools, and equipment over a mountain trail so steep it earned the nickname the meanest 33 miles in history, carried not in a single trip but often across dozens of exhausting round trips through snow and ice, a demand enforced by the Northwest Mounted Police, who refused entry to anyone without a full year's worth of provisions, a rule that likely saved thousands from starvation during the winters that followed. Those who made it built Dawson City almost overnight, a town that swelled from a few hundred people to an estimated 40,000 within 2 years, briefly making it larger than many established cities on the West Coast at the time. Saloons ran around the clock. Gold dust was accepted as currency at the bar. Fortunes were made and lost within a single winter, and and when the gold began to run thin, most of that population vanished just as fast as it had arrived, leaving behind a town built for tens of thousands that would shrink to barely 1,000 residents within a decade. What remains today is not a ruin, but something stranger, a town that refused to fully let go. Dawson City still maintains its unpaved streets and false front wooden buildings by law, a living museum where permafrost beneath the boardwalks causes buildings to sink and tilt at odd angles year after year, engineers constantly re-leveling structures that the ground itself refuses to let stand straight. The SS Klondike, once one of the largest stern-wheelers to navigate the Yukon River, sits permanently dry-docked in town, a monument to an era when the river itself was the only highway in or out. Nearby, massive dredge tailings, curling snake-like ridges of overturned gravel left behind by industrial gold dredges decades after the original rush, still scar the valley floor, visible from satellite imagery as scars that time has not yet softened. Along the historic route to the goldfields, the shores of Bennett Lake still hold the remains of thousands of hastily built wooden boats, abandoned the moment the ice broke in the spring of 1898 as an entire tent city of stampeders launched onto the lake within days of each other, racing to reach Dawson City before the best claims were gone. Photographs from that spring show a lake so crowded with makeshift vessels that it resembled a floating town more than a wilderness crossing, a scene that vanished almost as quickly as it appeared once the fleet departed. Today, the shoreline sits silent again, visited mostly by hikers, finishing the historic Chilkoot Trail, with only scattered rusted stove parts and rotting timber remaining as evidence that tens of thousands of people once stood exactly there, desperate and freezing, waiting for a lake to thaw. And that river never stopped moving, even after the gold rush ended. The Yukon River stretches over 1,980 miles from its headwaters in British Columbia to the Bering Sea in Alaska, making it one of the longest rivers in North America. During the gold rush, it was the primary transportation route for tens of thousands of stampeders, and today it remains a lifeline for communities that have no road access at all. In winter, the river freezes solid enough to support vehicles, temporarily transforming into an ice highway. In spring, the breakup of that ice is such a dramatic annual event that the town of Dawson City runs a betting pool called the Yukon River Ice Pool, guessing the exact minute the ice will finally break, a tradition running for over a century, with the ice itself sometimes shattering with a sound loud enough to be mistaken for artillery fire echoing between the valley walls. Along its banks, king salmon complete one of the longest freshwater migrations of any salmon species on Earth, swimming nearly 2,000 miles upstream from the ocean to spawn, arriving exhausted, scarred, and biologically transformed by a journey that will end their lives within days of completion. Few other animals on the planet travel that far simply to ensure the next generation exists at all, their bodies deteriorating visibly with every mile as they burn through fat reserves that were never meant to last this long. Now back to the wilderness, because beyond the gold and the river, the Yukon holds communities that have adapted to isolation in ways that feel almost impossible by modern standards. Whitehorse, the territorial capital, is home to roughly 70% of the Yukon's entire population, and yet it remains one of the smallest capital cities in North America, a place where a 20-minute drive in almost any direction leads directly into uninterrupted wilderness. Its airport was built during the Second World War as part of the Northwest Staging Route, a chain of airfields that once ferried American aircraft to the Soviet Union through some of the most unforgiving terrain on the continent. Pilots, navigating by little more than compass headings and instinct through weather that could close in without warning. Further from any major road, communities like Beaver Creek, the westernmost settlement in Canada, exist at the very edge of the map, close enough to Alaska that residents often shop across the border simply because it is closer than the nearest Yukon town. Winter supply runs here are planned with the same precision as an expedition, because a single mechanical failure on an empty stretch of highway can mean hours, sometimes days, without help arriving, and temperatures can make the difference between a delay and an emergency. Each February, the Yukon Quest sled dog race pushes both mushers and dog teams across nearly 1,000 miles of frozen wilderness between Whitehorse and Fairbanks, Alaska, a route so demanding that competitors must be entirely self-sufficient between checkpoints that can be over 200 miles apart, carrying survival gear for conditions that can shift from merely brutal to genuinely lethal within hours. Teams of dogs bred specifically for this kind of endurance can maintain a steady pace for days at a time, their thick double coats and oversized paws built for exactly this landscape and no other. Connecting many of these communities, the top of the world highway lives up to its name, running along exposed mountain ridgelines rather than through valleys, offering unbroken views for dozens of miles in every direction. But only during the few months each year, it remains open at all. For most of the winter, the road is closed entirely, snowed under and impassable, and the small ferry that connects it across the Yukon River near Dawson City stops running the moment the ice becomes too thick to break, but not yet thick enough to drive across, a narrow seasonal gap that can cut the town off from that direction completely for several weeks every year. And then there are places that resist easy explanation altogether. The Yukon experiences some of the most intense Aurora borealis activity on the entire planet, a result of its position almost directly beneath the auroral oval, the ring around the magnetic pole where charged particles from the sun collide with the atmosphere most violently. On the clearest winter nights, the sky does not simply glow, it moves, curtains of green and violet light rippling directly overhead in complete silence, a phenomenon so vivid that indigenous oral traditions across the north describe it as the dance of ancestors, spirits still visible against the dark. Nearby, ice fog forms when temperatures fall low enough that moisture in the air freezes instantly into microscopic crystals, creating a fog made not of water, but of solid ice suspended in stillness. Sound travels strangely through it, muffled and directionless, while sunlight passing through the crystals can create sundogs, twin glowing orbs flanking the sun itself, an optical effect so striking that early explorers sometimes recorded seeing what appeared to be 3 suns in the sky at once. Beneath the surface, permafrost has preserved secrets few landscapes on Earth can match. In 2020, gold miners working a claim near Dawson City uncovered the mummified remains of a wolf pup, frozen for an estimated 57,000 years, its fur, skin, and even whiskers still intact, a snapshot of an animal that walked this same ground during the last ice age. It was found beside the equally preserved remains of a caribou calf from roughly the same era, both animals locked in permafrost so effectively that scientists could still examine stomach contents and muscle tissue as if the animals had died only recently rather than tens of thousands of years ago. This region also sits at the eastern edge of what scientists call Beringia, the vast landmass that once connected Siberia to North America across what is now the Bering Strait, exposed during the last ice age when sea levels fell low enough to reveal an entire land bridge. Unlike most of Canada, much of the Yukon was never covered by glaciers during that period, meaning it served as an ice-free refuge, a corridor through which the earliest human populations, along with mammoths, ancient horses, and giant short-faced bears, are believed to have first entered the Americas. Fossil beds throughout the territory continue to yield remains from this exact crossing, one of the richest Ice Age fossil records found anywhere on the continent, a frozen archive of the very moment 2 continents were still, briefly, one. This is a landscape that does not let go of what it takes. It holds on to ice ages, gold rushes, and migrations with the same patience, releasing them only when it chooses to, and never on anyone else's schedule. As autumn arrives, the entire territory transforms one final time before winter locks it down completely. The boreal forest that covers most of the Yukon turns gold almost overnight, as aspen and birch respond to the shortening days, an event so consistent that residents can predict the peak color within a matter of days each year. Tombstone Territorial Park, often called the Patagonia of the North for its jagged granite peaks rising above the tundra, becomes one of the most photographed landscapes in the territory during this brief window, its slopes turning deep red and orange in a color shift that can last as little as 10 days before snow arrives and buries it all in white again. During this same narrow window, muskox, animals so well adapted to cold that they survived the last ice age largely unchanged, begin forming their winter defensive circles, adults facing outward with young sheltered at the center, a formation so effective against wolves that it has remained essentially unchanged for tens of thousands of years. Once eliminated from much of their historic range, reintroduced populations in the Yukon now represent one of conservation's quieter, long-term success stories. Animals that outlasted mammoths now walking the same tundra their ancestors once shared with them. Along the limestone cliffs of the Yukon's river valleys, peregrine falcons nest on ledges barely wide enough to hold a single bird, launching hunting dives that have been measured at over 240 miles per hour, making them the fastest animals on the planet in any environment, in any habitat, under any conditions. Nestlings fledge into an environment that offers no second chances, learning to fly directly above rivers and canyon walls where a single miscalculation ends in freefall rather than failure they can recover from. Beneath the same boreal canopy, wildfire plays a role most visitors never expect from a landscape defined by cold. Lightning-sparked fires can burn through hundreds of thousands of acres in a single season, and rather than simply destroying the forest, they reset it, clearing dense understory and triggering the release of seeds from cones that require intense heat to open at all. Within a year, fireweed carpets the blackened ground in brilliant magenta, the first sign of a forest already rebuilding itself from the inside out. And so the cycle closes exactly where it began. Ice built this territory, gold briefly emptied it, cold has guarded it ever since, and every creature that remains has learned to survive inside margins that would break almost anywhere else on Earth. Winter will return within weeks of these final gold leaves falling. The rivers will lock solid once more, and the same Aurora that has burned overhead for thousands of years will keep tracing its silent path across the dark, indifferent to whether anyone below is watching. The Yukon was never truly forgotten. It simply chose again and again not to be found easily. And for those who do find it, it rarely lets them leave the same person who arrived. If you enjoyed this journey into one of the last, truly wild corners of North America, make sure you are subscribed and click the thumbnail on your screen right now to jump into the next documentary YouTube thinks you will love. See you soon.